Day 2 in Jerusalem. I'm planning to go to the West Bank the following day. What they'll do is they will literally go in with bulldozers and knock down Palestinian homes, towns, and villages. Mind you, I feel more safe in Riyadh than I live in Washington, D.C. So I walk back to the old city of Jerusalem. I'm walking through the streets, and it's a beautiful city. It's like old, tight, narrow streets. It's just a maze in there. It's very cool to walk around and see. When you're here in America in the West, you have so many more issues that you don't see in the Middle East. The Christian Palestinians and the Muslim Palestinians, they live together. I mean, they might live in literally the same building.
So, Clyde, you're a Christian and you've
Yes.
lived in the Middle East. What was your experience?
Yeah, so um, my first experience in the Middle East was actually Africa, Middle East, was in Egypt. But that was my first experience in a Muslim country. That was before I joined the military. I was 19 at the time. And I was just traveling the world as a backpacker at that time in my life. I went to Egypt for 3 days to go see the pyramids. And I had never been to a Muslim country, so I didn't know what to expect. You know, growing up in a Christian community, a Christian household in America, in the Midwest, you hear all the bad things from the media about Muslims, about the Middle East, about how it's so dangerous over there, how they hate Christians, how they supposedly hate everybody else who's not Muslim. My first experience in the Middle East was great. Was great in Egypt. Um, I had a great experience with the locals, with the people. I had a taxi driver who I paid him probably $40 for the day, and he drove me literally the entire day from the morning till the sun went down. He took me to the pyramids. Um, he was like feeding me cigarettes in his car all day. He took me and we got lunch together. But I had a cross around my neck, and he obviously knew I was a Christian, and he was super nice. So that was really eye opening for me at the time. But that was a short trip. So fast forward a few years later, I was in the Marine Corps. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. I had two different jobs while I was in. I was an infantryman, and then I was also a Marine security guard. So my first job in the Marine Corps was to basically do the security for U.S. embassies overseas. My first post was in Tokyo, Japan, and then after that, my next post was in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And so I had always wanted to go to the Middle East and experience it more. Um, and so I requested a couple posts after Japan to go to the Middle East, and I got Saudi Arabia. So when I went there, I had really I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know much about Saudi Arabia. I really didn't know much about Riyadh at all. So I started doing my research beforehand. And when I got there, I knew essentially nothing about Islam other than what I thought I knew, which was what the media fed me and what people back home in America would tell me about Muslims. I spent 14 months there. It was one of the best times of my life. Uh, I had some amazing friends, both Americans at the embassy and both locals. The thing about Riyadh is it's not just Saudis that live there. It's a melting pot of a lot of different expats from all over the world because you have a lot of business there. You have the diplomatic community there. So I met a lot of Muslims from not just Saudi Arabia, but Sudan and all over the Muslim world. So I got exposed to all these different Muslims from these different parts of the world. And that was the first time I really learned about Islam and what it really was. We had two drivers at the embassy. The way it works is when we're out at post, we don't have our own vehicles. And so we have drivers that would take us off compound if we had to go somewhere. And so both of our drivers were Muslims. One was from Sudan, one was from Pakistan. They were both Muslim. They'd been driving the Marines for decades, been doing this for a long time. And when I showed up, I was a Christian. And I would be driving around with them and they would just talk to me about Islam because I would have questions because they're Muslim. I'm in a Muslim country and I have questions. And that was the first time when I realized that we have so many similarities. Like Christians and Muslims have more similarities than we don't. So yeah, I learned about basically like the history of Islam and how our Old Testament lines up with your guys' history of the ancient world and of Moses and of all the stories that we have in the Old Testament, pretty much the same. And of the prophets and all of that, I learned that Jesus was an important figure. Had no clue. I had no clue that Muslims held Jesus to such a high standard and um, believed that he was the Messiah, believed that he came from the Virgin Mary, and all of that stuff. I had no clue. So it was a great experience for me to learn about Islam, and I cultivated really, really good, like really, really good, close relationships with Muslims there. I've got a picture of one of my drivers on my desk right now. This is Assad.
Wow.
He's one of my best friends. This guy, he's the type of guy that would take a bullet for me, and I would do the same for him. He's a Muslim, I'm a Christian. We never had any issues with our religion. It's just a brotherhood, a bond that we had a really good relationship. And so, yeah, that was my first experience to Islam and the Muslim world and the Middle East, and I had a great time.
Was there never a part where you felt somewhat unsafe because of your
No,
religion?
dude, no, no, no. So that's the thing about the Middle East too. Is sure, there's some dangerous parts in the Middle East, but when like I was just in Dubai. I've been to Dubai a couple times. Dubai is a different story, kind of because it's so big and growing, and it's different than a lot of places in the Middle East. But a lot of places in the Middle East, even Saudi Arabia, are extremely safe. The culture is completely different. You don't have petty crimes there. Like in Saudi Arabia, you're not going to get robbed. You can leave your purse or your bag on a bench and walk away, go to the bathroom. Nobody's going to steal it. Nobody's going to take it. Nobody's going to steal your bike. Nobody's going to do it petty crimes like that. That's what I noticed there. Um, and the culture is just completely different. When you're here in America in the West, you have so many more issues that you don't see in the Middle East. Sure, you have some different issues in the Middle East that you don't see here, but petty crimes, homelessness, theft, robberies, assaults. I never once felt for my safety when I was in Saudi Arabia or most of the places in the Middle East that I visited.
Yeah, I lived in Riyadh for 3 months, and I was like recently a Muslim. So like nobody there would have ever known I was a Muslim. Right? I was a white man, and I'd walk around 1 o'clock at night in the most random places in Riyadh, and I felt completely safe.
Yeah, I feel more safe in Riyadh than I do. I live in Washington, D.C. I feel more safe there than a lot of neighborhoods here and a lot of neighborhoods in Chicago or New York or a lot of major cities in America.
And then you were in Palestine, right?
Yeah, so I was in Palestine back in April of this year, 2025. It was my first and hopefully not my last time. I really want to go back. We'll see if that's allowed. But it was life changing. So I've been to the Middle East. I've been to probably 6 or 7 countries in the Middle East. Lived in Saudi Arabia, been to the UAE, been to a couple other of the Gulf countries, Jordan, Egypt. And so going to Palestine, I essentially wanted to see things as they were for myself with my own eyes. So, um, so I flew into Tel Aviv. Well, I'll give you some backstory. I went to Dubai, first part of my trip for a friend's wedding, and he's an American who married a Saudi woman. So I went to that wedding. That was really cool. And then I left from Dubai and I went to Tel Aviv. Flew into Tel Aviv. Luckily, I didn't have any issues when I got in because I've heard horror stories of people flying into Tel Aviv and they get denied or they get interrogated or sent away. I know a couple of people personally who've experienced that. And so with my Instagram kind of gaining traction, I didn't know if that was going to be problematic for me when I got in there. But it was in my favor because I showed up on Passover. So it was a big Jewish holiday. And when I went through customs, there was one lady working the counter, and I think she was just like, "Oh, I'm the person who got stuck here on a holiday. I don't want to be here." And she was just stamping and letting people through. So I didn't have issues, luckily. Um, and then I have some contacts in Jerusalem, some American contacts there, both in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, that work there. And so I went and I stayed at a hotel in Jerusalem, close to East Jerusalem. And I was there for 5.5 days in Palestine. So I went and stayed in my hotel my first time there. So the purpose of my trip was to go. And to see the West Bank, initially I wanted to try to get to Gaza, but that's just it. I looked at so many different avenues to try to get there, and it's just not feasible. Even to get close and document it, it's just not possible. So I was like, okay, what's the next best thing? The West Bank. I'll go to the West Bank and I'll document it, and I'll see what's actually going on there for myself instead of just listening to what Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or social media is saying. How about I go there for myself and see what's actually happening and document it and bring back what I find. So I stayed in Jerusalem. And also when I was there, I didn't want to just document, but I'm there as a Christian in the Holy Land. So I want to go visit the places where Jesus lived and walked and performed miracles and see all these holy sites. So I did that with some of my free time. Um, the first day I was there, I went to my hotel in Jerusalem and I met up with my American friend who lives there in Jerusalem. He kind of walked me around, showed me a bit of the city. I got my bearings. We went to the old city of Jerusalem, which was built, I think, in the 14 or 1500s. Um, Went to the old city, and it's a very interesting place, Jerusalem, because it's a melting pot of the three Abrahamic religions. You have all of them there, and it's an important, probably the most important place for at least Judaism and Christianity, but it's also very important for Muslims. This ground, like this land, is very important to all three Abrahamic religions, and they're all living there. And it's a very, very interesting dynamic because if you go to Saudi Arabia, it's Muslims. If you go to Lebanon, you're going to have Christians and Muslims, but you're not going to have the Jews. When you go to Jerusalem, you have all three. So it's almost a tense environment to be in. So it was very interesting for me to be there. And you have a Jewish quarter of the city, you have uh, Palestinian quarters, you have the Armenian quarters, and the way it's broken up is basically the Jews have their quarters, and that's the Jewish people. You have Orthodox Jews, mainly Orthodox Jews that live there, and then you have the Palestinian quarters, and the Palestinian quarters is going to be broken up by both the Christians and the Muslims. And so the Christian Palestinians and the Muslim Palestinians, they live together. I mean, they might live in literally the same building. They might share the same apartment. Uh, they have businesses next to each other. The thing that ties them together is not the religion. They understand their religion is different. They understand that Christians and Muslims are different. We have our differences, but they're Palestinians together, suffering and oppression at the end of the day. So that's what really brings them together, and they have that harmony. And that's the cool thing about that part of the world is you see Christians and Muslims, and they've been doing this for a long time, hundreds of years, living in this place together, coexisting peacefully together and working together. You might have a barber shop that has Muslims and Christians both working there, or a restaurant, or whatever the case is. It's not like they're segregated or separated. They just live and coexist peacefully together and just choose to practice their own religion separately. That's how it works. And so it's very tense because often the Jewish quarter, you just have Jews. And if you go over there as a Palestinian or even as a Christian with a cross around my neck, you're going to get looks. You're going to kind of feel unwelcome there. But in the Palestinian quarters, it's super welcoming. They're extremely nice people. They want to invite you into their restaurant or to their home or to their place of business and talk to you, ask you where you're from. I had very good conversations with the people just walking around the streets, going into different restaurants. They're very nice and hospitable and welcoming, as most places in the Middle East. Um, so I spent a couple days in Jerusalem. I went to one of the first places I went to there was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which as Christians, we believe that's where Jesus was crucified and buried. That was very important for me to see and visit. Um, and then I walked the Via Dolorosa, which is where we believe Jesus carried the cross, which is very cool for me to experience and walk that path. Um, and so I didn't mention this earlier, but I had a plan to go to the West Bank, right? But I didn't have anything set in concrete. Nothing, no plans were set. I had spoken to my American friend, my American contact who lived there, and I told him, "Hey, I'm going to come to Jerusalem. Here's my plan. I want to go to the West Bank. I want to visit these places. I want to document and see it for myself, but I need a guide, somebody who can take me." He couldn't take me. He was busy with work. Um, so he was trying to find a contact for me who could take me to the West Bank. So I am planning to go. This is day two now. Day two in Jerusalem. I'm planning to go to the West Bank the following day. And my friend had a guide, but he fell through. So I have no guide, nobody take me to the West Bank. Now it's about 9 o'clock at night. I go to a gym in Jerusalem to work out, and then I leave the gym and I'm like, I'm hungry. I'm going to go get some food. I wasn't eating at Jewish places because kind of boycotting them. So I was looking for a Palestinian restaurant that was still open at like 10 o'clock at night at this point. So I walk back to the old city of Jerusalem. I'm walking through the streets, and it's a beautiful city. It's like very old, tight, narrow streets. It's just a maze in there. It's very cool to walk around and see. And so I'm walking around, and I find this Lebanese restaurant that's still open. So I go inside. I sit down. I have a falafel sandwich and some fries, and there's like three older Palestinian gentlemen who are there hanging out, talking. And so I sit down, have my food, and I leave. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back to my hotel. I'm gonna sleep. I'll wake up early and I'll try to figure something out in the morning. That's what I'm thinking. So I step out into the street and I'm on my phone looking up Google Maps, my hotel, so I can walk back. And one of the older Palestinian gentlemen who was in there eating, he's outside having a cigarette. He walks up to me and he taps me on the shoulder. And he just starts talking to me, just this old Palestinian guy. There's like nobody else in the streets. And he's talking to me. I'm talking to him. He's like, "Oh, where are you from?" Obviously, I'm a foreigner there. He's asking me what I'm doing. I'm like, "Oh, I'm just American here visiting Jerusalem. I'm a Christian, so I want to see some of the holy sites and stuff." And I'm being kind of vague because I don't know who he is. I don't know if I can trust him. And we get to talking, and he says, "Oh, I'm a Palestinian Christian. I've lived here for my whole life." And he's like, "What else do you have planned on your trip?" And I was like, "Well, I spent a couple days in Jerusalem, but the second half of my trip, I wanted to go to the West Bank, and I want to see Bethlehem, and I want to see Jericho, and all these other places." And then I start to feel more comfortable with him. And I said, "But I don't want to just go and see holy sites. I want to go and I want to see what's going on in the West Bank because as an American, I'm coming here to kind of see the truth for myself." And he goes, "Ah, okay." And he starts to get it. He starts to understand. He's like, "Let me tell you, I used to work for the UN for 40 years or whatever it was." And he's telling me all these things about the West Bank. And so I'm thinking, okay, if this guy worked for the UN, maybe he knows of an organization he can get me plugged into, who can take me over there. Maybe I can donate or whatever it is. And I'm like, "Do you know of any organizations?" And he's like, "No, I don't really know of any good ones that you can find. But I have a son-in-law, and he takes people to the West Bank. He's a tour guide. Let me call him and see if he's awake." This is like 11 o'clock at night at this point. This guy's just like, it's 11 o'clock. He could be going home and going to his bed, but he's just talking to me. And so he gets on the phone. He calls his son-in-law, and he picks up, and they're talking in Arabic for a few minutes. He hangs up, and then he says, "Okay, follow me. Come with me." And so I follow him down this street. We go down a couple blocks and he pulls me into this alleyway and he walks me down to the middle of the alley. And his son in law is standing outside of his house and he introduces me. I meet him and his son in law invites me into his house. This is like 11 o'clock at night. He's like, "Okay, come on, come inside. I'll show you my house. We can talk and see if we can work something out." And so he takes me inside. Now, mind you, this is like two complete strangers in the middle of the night in Palestine. I'm a stranger, foreigner, and this guy's inviting me into his house. He takes me upstairs in his house, beautiful house in the old city of Jerusalem. He introduces me to his family, and then he takes me up on his roof and he shows me this cool panoramic view of the city of Jerusalem, which was super cool. I got a couple pictures and videos from up there. And then we go into his house and we have tea and we just start talking. And so he's like, "Okay, I hear you want to go to the West Bank. Tell me what you want to do." And so again, I'm kind of treading lightly because I'm going there to do something that's very problematic in the eyes of the Israelis. So I'm treading lightly with how I talk to people, strangers. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a Christian from America. I want to go to the West Bank and visit Bethlehem and Jericho and Nazareth if possible, and all these places and see it." And then we get to talking, and again, I start feeling more comfortable with him. And I said, "Okay, but here's the other thing. I don't just want to go and see holy sites, but I came here as a American Christian who wants to see the truth for myself of what's going on in Palestine in the West Bank." And he leans forward and he goes, "Okay, I understand." And he's like, "Wherever you want to go, I will take you." And I kind of said, "Well, if you're comfortable with it, I would like you to take me to some of the worst parts." And he said, "I can take you and I can show you the truth." And so we agree upon that. We talk for maybe an hour longer that night. We come up with a plan of the places we're going to go to. And he himself came up with a plan to visit 9 different Palestinian families in the West Bank, because I told him I wanted to donate to something or help in any way that I could. I'm kind of just doing this off the cuff. And he's like, okay, I'll coordinate a meetup with some families that we can go visit and you can talk to them and you can get their story and you can understand the life here in the West Bank and what it's like to be a Palestinian under Israeli oppression and all of this stuff. If you want to donate, we can take food too. We can do all of that stuff. He coordinates all this himself. I'm sure he stayed up till like 1 in the morning coordinating all this. And then the next morning, he picked me up from my hotel in Jerusalem and we took off for the West Bank. So we leave Jerusalem, and do you know a little bit of the dynamic of the West Bank,
Not too much, no.
of how it operates? So it's very interesting. Um, so the West Bank is right next to Jerusalem. Um, it kind of horseshoes around Jerusalem, and it's on the border of Jerusalem. So you cross from Jerusalem into the West Bank, and you are going to a different country. That's what people need to remember. You're you're going from Israel. I recognize Jerusalem as Palestine still, but you're going from occupied Palestine, Jerusalem, Israeli control into what should be Palestine. This should be somebody else's country that has their own sovereignty and laws and border control and police force and military and governing and all of that. So you cross over into the West Bank from Jerusalem, and once you get over there, it's completely different. So it is a different country. It is Palestine, but it's completely controlled and occupied by Israel. So the Palestinians don't have their own governing. They have the PLO, but it's very limited as to what they can do and how they can govern themselves. Um, the Israelis have their military. They have their border patrol agency over there. It's all controlled by Israel. They have over 700 checkpoints in the West Bank. So what these checkpoints are is essentially, and if you know the Holy Land, it's a small place. You know, all of Israel, Palestine, it's a small place. Once you get into the West Bank, it's even smaller. It's a very tiny piece of map. Um, but there's 700 checkpoints in the West Bank, and these checkpoints are just roadblocks. So when you get over there, for the Palestinians, they control the movement, they control their food, their water, their electricity, their access to the internet, their ability to leave. They don't have their own airport, they don't have their own passports. These are the Palestinians in their own land. They don't have these basic human rights. And when they're traveling to and from within the West Bank, there's these Israeli checkpoints. And what they are is you'll be driving on the highway, and all of a sudden you get stopped at this gate in the road, and you have a military blockade. And they once your car gets up there, they ask you questions. It's like you're going into Mexico. They ask you questions. Where are you going? Who's in your car? Where are you from? Show me your documents. They open up your hood, they open up your trunk, they check your car, they take you out at gunpoint sometimes. It's very rough and brutal. And sometimes they just close down the checkpoints so you can't move freely throughout the West Bank. And that's a huge problem for people to get around when it comes to working or going to visit family members or whatever it is. They don't have the basic right to move freely throughout the West Bank. So when we get in there, my guide, he's telling me all about the dynamic of the West Bank and how it operates. And he's showing me these are the checkpoints, this is how they work. And then you look off in the distance and he's pointing out, see, this is a Palestinian village right here. But over here on this hill, this is a Israeli settlement. And what that is the Israelis are encroaching further and further and colonizing the land of the West Bank, Palestine, with these settlers. So what they'll do is they will literally go in with bulldozers and knock down Palestinian homes, towns, and villages. Mind you, these are both Christians and Muslims. So any Christians listening, these are the Israelis doing this to Christian Arabs. Okay, it doesn't matter if they're Arab, these are Christians. This is what the Israelis, the Jews, are doing to them. And so they'll go in and bulldoze their houses and their towns, and then they'll build atop of that with these Israeli settlements. So they're just further and further encroaching in and stealing land. It's just colonization, colonialism. So he would point these out. This is a Palestinian village, and there would be a big fence around it, barbed wire fence around it. And he says, now this is where they live. If they want to leave, the gates have to open up, and they can only leave at certain times of the day, times of the week. Otherwise, they have to stay in their village. And then these are Israeli settlements. And he would just point them out. And as we're driving, you would also see cars, vehicles, and there's a difference in the license plates. So you have a yellow license plate and you have a white license plate. I believe, if my memory serves me right, the yellow license plate is a Jerusalem license plate, meaning that that license plate, that car can move freely to and from Jerusalem and the West Bank. But the white license plates, those are the Palestinian ones, and those cannot come into Jerusalem. And those are the ones that are going to get checked a lot more heavily. So he's just explaining to me all of this, and eventually we get to our first stop along our journey because we're going to meet these families. Our first stop, he wants to take me to this place called Shiloh. Now, you can tell me, I don't know if this is significant to Muslims, but it's a significant historical site to Christians and Jews because this is the place where we believe the tabernacle was with the Ark of the Covenant. Is there anything in Islam
Not
for that?
not to my knowledge.
Okay. So in Christianity, this and Judaism, it's very important to both religions. And so I'm sure at one point it was controlled by probably Palestinian Christians, but now it's under complete control of the Israelis because it's a very important Jewish site. So we visited that. There were some old, very, very old and very cool Byzantine church ruins that we visited, and then we saw the actual place where the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant were. That was cool. And then we got back in the car and we kept moving. And then from there we went to Jenin and Nablus. So in the West Bank, um, you have all these different towns and villages, and another way that it's structured is you have three sectors. You have the A block, the C block, and the B block. And for the longest time, the B and C block were the worst parts, meaning the most occupation, the most control from Israel. Now it's pretty much congruent all the way through. A, B, and C are pretty much all controlled and occupied by Israel. So, I told him, take me to the rough parts. I want to see like the raw, rough parts of the West Bank. So he takes me to Jenin and Nablus, which were two of the three worst, notoriously worst towns. So we went there and we went to a church to meet with a Christian family. He was the keeper of the church. He basically did the upkeep of the church. And we visited with him, and he was the one who knew all the other families that we were to go visit. So we visited both Christian and Muslim families both days that I was there. But yeah, so we went and we met up with him, and then we went to a grocery store and we got some food. And we pulled out some cash, and then we went off to go visit these families. The first day, I think we met up with six families. Um, and so these were Christian Palestinian families. So if there's any Christians listening, listen to this. So we went to their house and we dropped off the food and the money. And uh, I wanted to talk to them and I wanted to get their story. I wanted to understand what their daily life was like living in the West Bank, living amongst Muslims and Christians and Jews, and being a part of this Israeli occupation. That's what I wanted to learn, each of their individual stories with all of this. And so, what I can say is, these people are probably the most kind-hearted, genuine, down-to-earth, most hospitable people I've ever met in my life. Now, these are people who have nothing. They live in poverty. To give you some examples, they're making about $500 or the equivalent monthly to support an entire family, and the wages are so low there that families and entire families, extended families, have to live under one roof. So you have the grandparents, you have extended cousins, all the kids, no matter their age, their kids might be in their 40s. The entire family bands together and lives under one roof to combine resources and survive, essentially, in the West Bank. Because working there is very difficult. We can talk about that later, maybe. But so we go there, these people have nothing. And we bring the food, and every single house that I went to, both the Christian and Muslim Palestinians, every single house that I went to, it's the culture there. They bring coffee or tea and snacks, and they want to visit. They want to give you gifts when you leave. They're very nice, asking you, begging you to stay longer and visit with them. And so I would talk to them about their stories. I'm like, so what is it like living here in the West Bank with all of these things? And I would ask them, about the dynamic between, because they're Christians. I would ask them, what's it like living with the Muslims? What's it like living with these Jewish settlers? And they would say, we have no problem with the Muslims. We've lived with them for forever. My grandparents had a business with them. There's no issue with the Muslims. They live together peacefully. You have a mosque over on this corner of the street. You have a church on this corner. That's how they live. Perfectly fine. But with the Israeli settlers will come in and they will burn cars. They will attack their house, throw windows at their or throw rocks at their windows. They will attack their crops, burn their crops, do all of this stuff because the Israelis are trying to occupy and control and colonize the land. And they would tell us things like, we can't move freely throughout the West Bank because of the checkpoints. Some of them had family members that were killed by Israeli settlers or the Israeli IDF. Some of them, here's another thing, it's pretty crazy that I learned is the Israelis control their water supply. So they, this is insane to me, but they get water supplied to them 1 day a week, the Palestinians in the West Bank. And so I would ask them, well, how else do you have water throughout the week? And they say, well, we have these water tanks. And I would see them as we're driving through. They would have to prop up these water tanks on the side of their house to give them water throughout the rest of the week. And there would be other houses that we were driving by, and you would see empty water tanks on the side of their house with bullet holes in them. Like the Israelis are driving by and shooting up their water tanks so they don't have water. This is what the Jewish people are doing to them. Um, and so that was pretty congruent throughout all the houses that I visited, pretty much the same story. And then one of the other big problems that they had is they don't have money. They don't have jobs because it's very hard for them to find work with the economy there. And if they can find work, it's maybe one, maybe at most two members of the household that can find work. And it's not a high paying job. And to get to work is very difficult because of the checkpoints. So some days they can't get to work, or some days it takes them 2 hours to go a couple miles just to get to their place of employment because of the checkpoints, or the checkpoints are closed, or whatever the case is. So, like, that's the dynamic in the West Bank, essentially. Um, and so we went and visited the 6 Christian families that day. And like I said, the story was pretty much very similar throughout all the families. My experience with them was very similar: tea, coffee, and snacks. Every house asking me to stay longer, giving me gifts. This was a gift. I have it on my desk right now. But a family gave me this angel as a gift as when I left, and that was pretty cool. Like I said, these people have nothing, but they want to give you everything they have. Um, and so we wrapped up that first day, um, my guide and and then I went back to my hotel in Jerusalem. The next day, we woke up bright and early. We went back out to the West Bank, and that day we visited. Uh, I think it was one more Christian family, and then two Muslim families. But and cut me off if you think I'm rambling too long on this part of the story. But the so we went and visited the Christian families. We went to the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, which is really cool. Um, I thought that was cool because for Christians and Muslims, it's both important. And when you go there, here's the thing: Christians will go to Israel, Palestine, and they'll go there as a Christian, like, I want to see the Holy Land. I want to see where Jesus was. I want to see all these holy sites and the manger and all this stuff. Um, but you go there, and a lot of Christians don't realize that these are important sites for Muslims too, like the Church of the Nativity, where Jesus was born. There are both Christians and Muslims that travel there and visit that site because it's important to both religions. And I don't think a lot of Christians realize that, but there was 3 Muslim girls, probably around the same age as me in their mid late 20s, that were there. We You go into the church, and it's still an active Orthodox church. They still have services there, but you go down, and it's church, like I said, but they don't care if Muslims come in, and they understand that it's important to Muslims too. So Muslims can go into the church, and they can go down and see the manger, and they can go down and see the place. And so yeah, we were down there, and there were Muslims, there were Christians down there visiting that site. And then we visited one more family in Bethlehem, and then we visited two Muslim families. The second family that we visited was really cool because it was a Bedouin family. Are you familiar with the Bedouins? You're not. So Bedouins are basically, I don't want to compare this to the Amish, but kind of. They just live off the land. These are very traditional people, Muslim villages that live in the deserts, and they usually don't have electricity or running water or vehicles. They just live off the land in the desert, and they just want to be left to themselves, away from haram things and away from the the sinful world, and they just practiced Islam, and they lived a very simple herd style lifestyle in the deserts. You have Bedouins in Saudi Arabia. You have Bedouins in everywhere in the Middle East. I've seen them in Saudi. I've seen them in Jordan. Um, but I would just see them. I never had like interactions with them. And this was really cool. This was like one of the coolest cultural experiences, especially with a Muslim, I've ever had in my life. So, like I said, these are very like these people want to be left alone. They just want to live in their village and practice Islam and live their simple life. And so my guide, he's also a Christian Palestinian. He's an Orthodox Christian, but he has a very good working relationship with lots of people in the West Bank, both Muslims and Christians. And so somehow, not sure how he was able to do it, but he was able to befriend a family, one of the Bedouin families in the village. And these are people that like, even Muslims, they don't like uh, Muslims from the outside world to come in. Like they just want to be left alone. But this Palestinian Christian man was able to befriend one of the families, and he wanted me to go there and meet them and visit with them. So on our second night, we went to this village, and it was out in the middle of the desert, no cars. It was like tin hut and wooden tent houses, just a village in the desert. And so we visited this family, and it was we didn't meet the husband because he was with his other family, but we went and visited one of his wives and five of his children. And one of the wife's sisters was there as well. But I'm going into this, and I've had plenty of interactions with Muslims, knowing that I'm a Christian, never had issues, totally safe and comfortable, don't feel weird about it. But this one, I was a little like, I don't know how this is going to go because I know Bedouins just kind of like to be left alone. But when I say like these people were the ones who insisted we stay the longest out of anyone that we met with, we had to stay 2 hours longer. We stayed there till like midnight because they did not want us to leave. And these are yeah, I'm a Westerner with a cross around my neck, Christian, in a Bedouin village with a Christian Palestinian, and they're begging us to stay longer, feeding us more coffee, Turkish coffee at like 10 o'clock at night, which if you know, will just
Yeah,
kick you
yeah,
like a
yeah.
dog. Yeah, it's strong stuff. So, but it was awesome. And the kids were super fun. They were like boxing me and trying to wrestle me and stuff. And I mean that's what I've experienced with Muslims. Like even the Bedouins, it's a beautiful experience, a beautiful time with them. And that was like, yeah, one of the most raw cultural experiences I've ever had in my life. It was super cool. Um, and then yeah, the next day was my last day. I spent some time in Jerusalem, spent some time with my guide, and then I headed out. From there, I went to Jordan. I had some issues. This is a long story. I don't know if we have time to get into it, but I had some issues leaving um, Palestine, occupied Palestine, because it's controlled by Israel. So I left uh, the border and drove from the border of Palestine into Jordan. But I got held up at the border for 4 hours and questioned and interrogated and searched and all of that good stuff by the Israelis. But yeah, like I said, it's a long story. But yeah, that was my a brief rundown of my experience in Palestine.
After the whole thing, that's because that's crazy, right? Like I think me being a white person who's lived in Saudi and Pakistan when I wasn't a Muslim, I lived in Pakistan, experienced that. Like I've thought like that's as far as you get as the extreme Western experience, but that's just tenfold anything I've ever experienced. What did you walk away with that changed in your life after that?
After the whole experience,
After the whole experience?
number one, first and foremost, it solidified my mission. It 1000% solidified and validated my mission to help the Palestinian people and to bridge the gap between Christianity and Islam. Because I experienced, and like I said, I've experienced hospitality and kindness from Muslims all over the world. But there, it was the experience was life changing. Like this is a mission I will 100% die for if I have to. That's what the people imparted on me. That's the impact they had on me. Um, and I want to bridge that gap, especially in the Holy Lands, because both Christians and Muslims are dying on a daily basis. It's the occupation. It's the G side. I don't know if we can use that word on here. But both Christians and Muslims are are suffering from this regime. And I went there as a Christian to experience the relationship and the dynamic between the Christians and Muslims there, and to lift that veil and hopefully lift the wool from the eyes of the people in America that think that Muslims are the ones causing the problems over there. It's just Hamas, it's just the Muslims, it's just the Arabs. It's not. They're the ones living peacefully with the Christians. There's Christians and Muslims who have sheltered together in mosques and in churches to hide from the Israelis. They're the ones working together to try to protect the Holy Land from the people who are taking it over. So that was what I left from there. Just a validation on my mission.
Yeah. So if you're going to then give tactical advice to the Muslim community and the Christian community on your mission as two different communities, what do we need to do to bridge that gap? What do we need to do to remove all the tension between us?
Yeah. So I mean, here's the thing: you have to use logic and reasoning and common sense. And I'll say this: Christianity's not going away. Islam's not going away. Um, Christians and Muslims are going to live on this planet until Jesus returns at the end of the day. And both sides got to recognize that and understand that and come to terms with that. Christians can't be like, well, we have to disassociate with Muslims and just hope they all go away. They're not going away, and Muslims have to do the same thing. You have to understand and recognize that both groups are going to exist forever. And we have to find common ground to say that, okay, that's going to happen without I can't control that. Like the Stoic philosopher Epictetus talked about the dichotomy of control. You can't worry about or put time and effort into things that you can't control. Only worry about and put time and effort into things that you can control. So you can't control that Muslims live in the world. You can't control that Christians live in the world, but you can control how you react to that fact. And that's it. So with that comes maybe understanding more about the opposite. If you're a Muslim, maybe understand Christians, understand psychology, understand their religion, and you'll find common ground. Trust me, you will. There's a lot of common ground there. And same for Christians. Understand Islam. Don't just read what you see on social media or the news or Fox News or what your politician is telling you here because they have a hidden agenda. Like me, growing up in a strictly Christian Republican home in Iowa, didn't know anything about Islam until I went to the Muslim world and realized these people are actually pretty nice and we have a lot more in common than I thought. So learn something about Islam. Go talk to a Muslim. I'm sure you have one around you. Go talk to a Muslim, speak to a Muslim. They're nice people. Find some common ground and agree to disagree and allow the other person to practice their religion. They're going to do it, man. Agree to disagree and let them practice their religion. Muslims want to practice, and you know this very well. Radical Islam is a thing, right? But it's not as big of a problem as people make it out to be. It's blown way out of proportion. Sure, you have ISIS, you have Al Qaeda, you have these things that are probably propped up by Israel, but um, it's not a big problem. It's really not. The vast majority of Muslims are peaceful people that just want to live their life, go to their job, raise a family, and practice Islam, pray to Allah, and do these things, and just live their own life and mind their own business. That's the majority of Muslims. They're not coming in here trying to chop your head off and make you convert or anything like that. So let them live their life and agree to disagree. And same thing for both parties.
Yeah, and it becomes an incredibly slippery slope when we start to associate the traits of one person to the entire religion. It's like if you take a small portion of people that commit Islamic terrorist attacks and then you say, because they were Muslims, all of Islam is terrorism. It's the same thing, right? You can take the KKK, right? That goes back to Christianity, but we don't associate that with Christianity because once again, that's unfair to take the actions of a small group of people and then attribute the entire religion to those actions.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, it's a tiny minority, dude. But the media and our government has done a great job of blowing that way out of proportion and using that as propaganda to demonize the whole Middle East and Muslim world. But they just like touch grass, bro. Go out there and talk to a Muslim. It's not that hard. They're nice people. Learn for yourself. Maybe read a bit of the Quran. Maybe watch some YouTube videos on it. I don't know. But learn a little bit and you'll find common ground. And you'll realize they're not all like that. The majority of them are nice, nice people. Actually, they're probably some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. And I see another issue too is social media tends to amplify everything, right? So it's like, for example, on my content, yes, I am consciously aware I do push the borderline of like virality and saying things that are very controversial. And that's something I have to work on a fine balance. And I'm aware of that. But I also get a lot of comments from so-called Christians, and it's just the most despicable hate you could get. But
Oh,
then
I'm
the thing
sure. I'm
is,
sure, bro.
but the reality is, I've never met a Christian in person and had a bad relationship with them or had a bad conversation or had them say anything negative. So it's like we see these small portions. It's the same thing. Like I'll hold the Muslim community just as accountable, right? There's a saying like, "Oh, there's no love like Christian hate, or there's no hate like Christian love." But what you're doing is, once again, you're attributing such a small portion of people and then putting it as a blanket statement on everybody who exists under that religion, and it's unfair.
Yeah, dude, trust me. I mean, I get plenty of hate DMs and comments all the time too from probably more Christians actually. It's actually rare for me to see a hate comment from a Muslim, whether I post a video that's solely about Christianity, um, or whatever the case is. Like I've on very rare occasions seen a hate DM or a negative DM from a Muslim. It's a lot of support from Muslims saying we support you, we appreciate what you're doing for the Palestinian people, and bridging the gap we're trying to between Christians and Muslims. I hate to say it, but I get more hate from Christians. I get hate from my own people. Um, so that's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing. Um, because there's where are you from in the States? Okay. Real pretty conservative area?
Super conservative. Yeah, yeah. Like as conservative as you can get.
Okay, so what was your upbringing? Did you grow up religious at all or agnostic, atheist?
So my mother grew up Mormon in her family, and then she left the Mormon religion when she was 18. And then my father grew up Christian, and he also left his religion when he was 18. And then we were raised in a very free thinking way that you can do what you want, you can think what you want, right? There was never a force of this. You know, we'd sometimes go to church with my grandma, and that was about it.
Okay. And do they affiliate with any religion these days? And what do they think about you converting to Islam?
They're super supportive. I've been very blessed to have really good parents, and they're both what they taught me from a young age is just be willing to listen to people, be willing to accept that you might be wrong, and
Yeah,
even if you disagree with someone, still hear them out. So they're the exact same way with me. Like my dad and I will have very intellectual conversations where we'll kind of challenge each other and go back and forth.
that's great, man. Yeah. I I kind of preach that too and try to live by that is to have an open mind on things and let people say their piece. Like I've not as much as you obviously, but I have studied Islam. Like I looked into it. There was a time where I had to step back from the church itself and kind of reanalyze if that's actually something that I believe in because I was raised in the church. So it was kind of like forced teaching. So there was definitely a point in my life where I had to step back and be like, let me take a step back and kind of try to remove all this forced teaching and see what it is that I actually believe in and why I believe it. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians and Muslims too don't do that. They just kind of lock themselves into whatever they were taught from childhood, and they're very, very, very closed off to any other opinions. But that's a dangerous place to be in, to be so closed-minded.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think that's where a lot of the hate actually comes from because something I say. So I actually kind of got inspired by you. Your bio says "voice for the voiceless," and my bio actually says "voice for the ummah." And I got that inspired from your bio because I think I give a very unique opinion and context to the Muslim community because I'm a very minority, so to speak. Because I think, regardless if you're a practicing Muslim or practicing Christian, that's how you're raised. You should take a second to sit back and analyze, is this my belief because I believe it, I found it to be the truth? Or is this my belief because someone else told me it's supposed to be my belief?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is the only way to do it. And how can you truly, and I say this to Christians, how can you really call yourself a Christian if you don't even know why? Like it's just you were born into a Christian home from like since you were a baby, you went to church every Sunday, your pastor told you this is what's right and true, your parents told you this is what's right and true. And if you got into a debate with one of those Christians, they couldn't even defend themselves because they don't really know why they believe what they believe. It's just forced teaching. So it is good. I would challenge both Christians and Muslims to take that step back and actually look at it from a more analytical perspective, kind of like looking at it from the outside looking in to see why you believe it and if it's actually something you believe. Um, and I think it's also good for both parties to study the other religion. Not to say that like, oh, maybe I want to be a Muslim or maybe I want to be a Christian and that's why I'm looking into it, but have an understanding of both parties. Take a look at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah, in Islam, it's actually encouraged. It's one of our teachings is we're supposed to study the Bible. It's like
Really?
we have an order of, so you're supposed to learn the Quran is the first thing you're supposed to learn. Then you're supposed to learn the Hadiths, then study the Bible and study the Torah. So it's encouraged for us to learn it because it's you guys to us are referred to the people as people of the book, right? So I think something that's another thing many Christians aren't aware of is we actually so the belief that we hold is that the Bible was the Injil was revealed to Jesus, peace be upon him, and that has been tainted by man. But we believe that the Bible that you read before you go to bed still has the word of God in it, right? So we actually do take wisdom from the Bible. We do take lessons from the Bible, and there's lots of overlap from the Quran and the Bible. So that's why Muslims can sometimes maybe have a deeper understanding of Christianity than Christians of Muslims, because we believe that the religion of Islam is stacked on top of Christianity, right? So we don't
Yeah,
believe
yeah.
they're two separate entities. It's like Christianity and Islam added together equal our religion. So that's why we study it.
Okay. And what's the purpose behind studying the Torah?
Same concept, revealed to Moses, and then they stack on top of each other.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, most Christians wouldn't even consider that. They wouldn't. Most Christians haven't read the Quran, haven't studied anything about Islam, don't know anything about it. But yeah, I think it's good. I mean, that is a good concept to study both religions and to accept, I guess, truths from both. But also, if you're a Muslim and you want to debate a Christian, how can you debate me if you don't even know what I believe? And if I'm a Christian and I want to debate a Muslim, how can I debate you if I don't even know what you believe? How can I defend my faith against that? So for both Christians and Muslims, I think it is a good thing in having that enlightenment and understanding both religions. The sad thing is just Christians don't do that, and they probably never will. A very small minority of them will. Um, but I have a question for you. What has been your experience as a Westerner? And I've seen a couple of your videos of you talking about it, but to speak, hopefully, this can speak to the Americans. What has been your experience as an American Westerner living in the Middle East, converting to Islam, and living amongst Arab Muslims? Because that's another issue. Is it's not just Islam, but it's Arabs. There's a lot of people who are just honestly racist and have something against Arabs. So could you shed light on what your experience is with that as a
Yeah.
Westerner?
Yeah. Fun fact, Arabs make up about 10 to 20% of all Muslims. So for anybody who didn't know that. So without overlapping everything you said, very similar experience, right? Because most people, I didn't go, it's not like I had a giant poster on my chest saying I'm a Muslim, right? I don't have a beard. I don't look like a Muslim. I don't dress like a Muslim. And I'm white and have nothing that makes me seem like a Muslim. So I'd go to the gym and I'd have conversations with people there. And every single person in Saudi, when I was in Riyadh, was so just unconditionally kind to me, was the way I would describe it. And it's the same thing you're experiencing. I felt so safe. I felt like how I describe it is I felt like I was someone who didn't have a family and they just all took me in like I was their family. So the thing I challenge people in the West is just don't hold an opinion until it's something that you have experienced yourself, right? It's the same thing with the religion, what we just said. Do you actually believe it because you've experienced that and you know that to be a fact, or do you only believe that because another source has told you? So my experience was very similar to yours.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not as bad as the media makes it out to be. I had a guy send me a DM the other day, probably a young guy in his 20s, and he was like, "Hey, Clyde, I just planned this trip. I was inspired by you to go visit the Middle East, so I planned a trip, and I'm going to Jordan and Lebanon, and I'm really excited, but my family is like telling me not to go because I'll be killed, and I'm just like suicidal if I go over there. Can you like give me a message to show to my family that it's not like that? And like, am I actually in danger? Like, can you just give me some advice here?" And I like sent him like 10 laughing emojis and like a long paragraph of basically like, "You're gonna be totally fine, except the kindful acts of hospitality. Only thing you gotta watch out for is some tourist traps depending on where you go.
Yeah.
And getting uh charge a tourist price if you get a taxi or you're
Yeah.
buying a souvenir or something. That's about the only thing you have to watch out for."
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in Jordan and Lebanon. Have you been to Jordan? I mean, Jordan's I mean, it's more liberal, it's more um I guess you could say westernized, but yeah, especially Jordan, like you're not gonna run into issues there. Same thing with Lebanon. Have you been to Lebanon? And you're currently in basically UAE?
Between UAE and the UK.
Okay, yeah, you said that. You
Yes.
live in Dubai?
Dubai and the UK is two primary places I'm at. Yeah. I go back and forth. So I'm curious for you with since you've blown up on social media, right? If you want to say what viral is, you've gone viral. Has there been new things that you've learned about the Christian community since you do receive more Christian hate that you didn't previously know once you've blown up?
That's a good question. Yeah. So one of the reasons why I briefly mentioned this, why I broke away from the church, um, in my early adulthood is because I grew up in almost a cult like, it wasn't a real cult, but it was close. A cult like church, very strict, very, very overbearing. Um, there's a thing to be said about keeping people accountable to God's word. There's a way you can go about it the wrong way. And I think the church I grew up in was very judgmental in the wrong way, not in a loving way, in a very judgmental, hateful way. And it was very overbearing. And there were some things, there were some doctrinal things that I just didn't align with once I started taking that step back and studying it, really studying the religion for myself. Um, so I always knew that Christians can be extremely judgmental. They're a lot of them are they will cast a stone. What is the verse? He who is without sin may cast the first stone, right? So a lot of them will cast stones, but forget that they are a sinner themselves, and just judge other people. And I always hated that about the Christian community. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. So I knew going into this with the content stuff, especially Christians in America, I knew I was going to receive flack for um, supporting Muslims, not supporting or pushing the religion. I'm a Christian. I'm gonna support Christianity, but I can support the people, the human beings who are Muslims, and say, well, they don't deserve to all be slaughtered in Gaza. That's not what God wants. I can say that and support them in that sense, and support their right to practice their religion and have a free life. So I knew I was going to receive flack from that. But another thing that surprised me was the opposite, and that was from the Orthodox Christians. Um, and when you go to Palestine, you'll see a lots of Orthodox Christianity. You'll see a lot of Orthodox churches because that's the oldest remaining church. They hold themselves to a standard that is has been around since the first century in the way that they practice the religion. Even the way they pray the same as Muslims. They pray like Jesus, which I thought was really cool. I thought that was really cool when I learned that about Islam, that you guys actually pray like Jesus. And we just sit in our pews and kind of like slunch over and just say whatever, you know? But it's a no, it's a serious thing when you pray. You take it serious. And I like that Muslims take it so serious. They're actually putting themselves in the presence of God and praying like the Messiah, using him as that example. And I like that when I saw that from the Orthodox Christians as well. And so I saw that in Orthodoxy, they really do take the religion so much more serious. And another thing that I'm envious of Muslims is the the fact that Muslims are honestly more devout. Like in the Muslim world, and when I was in Saudi Arabia, I remember thinking like, man, Muslims are so much more devout to their religion than most of Christianity, and I was envious of that. But I found that again in Orthodoxy with the Orthodox Christians, and a lot of the Christians in Palestine is they live the lifestyle. They actually live the lifestyle of a Christian to the best of their ability, and they try as to their best of their ability to be as Christ-like as possible, which is what we're called to do as Christians. And I feel like Muslims do that in a lot of ways better than we do, most of us. So I've found a new respect for Orthodoxy. I'm currently studying it right now, um, looking more into it. But I've gotten a lot of support from the Orthodox Christians. It's mainly men. It's mainly the evangelicals. It's mainly the sects of the Protestant Church and the evangelicals that are judgmental ones, the bigoted ones, the racist ones, the ones that don't know anything outside of their own little hometown bubble or Fox News. Um, so yeah, that's the shift or thing that I've noticed since my account blew up.
Yeah, that makes sense. You posted a video which I absolutely loved, where someone pretty much said the summary was, it's bad to chase money, or it's not God conscious to chase money, or to want financial success. And I actually have an entire separate page that is strictly dedicated to teaching Muslims basic financial literacy, because I think that they could use it a lot and it will benefit them. And I have a firm belief that there's nothing wrong with wanting worldly success, money, success, as long as you maintain God consciousness, right? Keeping God front of mind. And you seem to post something similar. So I'm curious on your side, because I think you have had relatively good financial success for the average person. How do you, as a religious person, chase success, become successful, become financially successful without compromising your faith?
It all comes down to what is your biggest priority and making things an idol. If money is your idol, if that's all you think about, if that's your top priority all the time, and it's becoming more important to you than your relationship with God, then that's where the problem lies. And that can happen whether you have a lot or a little money. I would argue that it might happen more when you're poor. And that's going to trigger some people. But think about it. When you don't have money, and I mentioned this in that video, when you don't have money, when you're constantly struggling to pay your bills, constantly struggling to buy food, or you're penny pinching, or whatever the case is, that's all you think about. You're constantly stressed by the fact that you don't have money, you don't have enough, you need more, you need to put more time into work, and that's going to suck time away from praying or practicing your religion or keeping God centered in your life or keeping your family centered in your life because now I'm so focused on I got to make money, I got to pay these bills, I got to make more money, I got to apply to this other job, I got to do this, that, or the other. And now at that point, even though you don't have much, money has become your idol. You can also go on the opposite side of the spectrum and you become wildly successful and you get a bunch of money. You become a multimillionaire and you decide, well, I did all the work myself. This is my money. I made this money. I get to do what I want with it. I can buy the supercars. I can go on the private jet. I can take the trips. It's my money. I suffered for this. I worked for it. It's mine. I should enjoy the fruits of my labor. Sure, enjoy the fruits of your labor, but you didn't do that yourself. If you have success in life and you're religious, you have to attribute some of that to God. God gave you those blessings. That wasn't all you. You wouldn't have this life. You wouldn't have breath in your lungs if it weren't for God. So you can't say that. And that at that point, you can make money your idol. And if you're making all this money and you're not donating to the poor, you're not looking at poor people. Uh, if you can't see Christ, if you can't see Christ in a poor person, and you just look at a poor person and you say, "Well, that's their fault," or I don't have sympathy or empathy for that person because they're lazy or whatever the case is. You don't donate, you don't help, you don't do any philanthropical work. That's a bad place to be in too. So you can be making money your idol on either end of the spectrum. But if you're striving to be, this is what I say, if you're striving to do great things in life and you're working hard and you keep God centered and you stay focused and you stay away from sinful things, you stay away from lust or sexual immorality or laziness or slothfulness or lying or cheating or stealing, and you do everything above board with integrity, and you become successful, there's nothing wrong with that. God will bless you for your hard work. So enjoy the fruits of your labors from that perspective. And once you make more money, you have freedom. You have the financial freedom. I make, yeah, decent, pretty good money. Um, if you want to know numbers, I do anywhere from 20 to 40K as a full-time content creator. At that point in my life, I can focus on my life, and I've become so much more connected with God at this point, making this amount of money than I ever was when I didn't make, $4,000 a month. So there's nothing wrong with pursuing success and financial freedom. Don't pursue the love of money, but pursue financial freedom, because then you have the freedom to do other things in life and enjoy life more.
Yeah, and I think a major one is then you can spend your wealth in ways that are in ways that please God, right? You can donate more to charity. You can actually help people. You can, like, if you were right now working a job where you barely got by, you probably wouldn't have the time or the mental bandwidth to do your content, which has a positive thing. So I think that's big, and people don't realize it. Is the more money you have, the more you can help, right? And something I say is you should strive for an abundance in this life, not to have all of the worldly pleasures, but to gain an abundance in the next. Meaning, you should strive to become successful now so you can use that success to get more rewards, which will give you a better life in the next. Because in the Islamic, we believe in good deeds, which get you better rewards in the hereafter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, man. Like, if you don't have money, all you think about is yourself. Like, I don't know what your upbringing was financially, but I did not grow up in a wealthy household at all. Um, very, very much struggling to get by. Did not come from wealth in any way, shape, or form. When I got into adulthood, I did not make a lot of money. I was in the military, man. I made like $2,000, 2,100 bucks a month. So when you don't have money, that's all you really think about. You're constantly stressed about it. And yeah, you don't have more to spread to those who need it. So I hate when religious people have that concept that money is yeah, people say money is the root of all evil. But it depends on if you're making it your idol or not, and how you're using it. Are you using it to bless others or just hoarding it for yourself?
Yeah. And I think it's also, you've mentioned becoming the best version of yourself. And I also think it's one of those aspects. Like, if we want to become the best version of ourselves, we need to be financially in a good place. We need to be healthy and in good shape. We need to have a good relationship with God. And I'm curious because you've recently started a group, and God reward you for that. Seems awesome. It seems what you're doing is really cool. And in the introduction video of your group, it says, a like minded group of people who want to become the best version of themselves. So I'm curious for you, what is the definition of becoming the best version of yourself?
There's a lot that goes into becoming the best version of yourself. But if God, what are the chances of being born? I don't know the statistics off of the top of my head, but it's very, 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 very improbable that you would ever exist. Like the odds of you ever being born are like billions to one. God created you. He put you on this earth for a purpose. Was my purpose to be created? Like, God put all this effort into making me and giving me this life, which is a miracle. Living is a miracle. If he's going to put all that effort into making me and giving me this life, I have two legs that work, I have two arms that work, I can see, I can speak, I can hear. I'm blessed. He's given me these blessings. Am I going to waste the blessings he's given me already and just go work a 9 to 5 at McDonald's and be lazy and slothful and get fat and not work out, not be healthy, not treat this as a temple of the Lord, not take care of the gifts that he's given me, my health? Am I going to do all those things, be lazy, and not worry about money? Just like, oh, I'll just barely get by and not try to have financial freedom, not try to build something successful, just waste all the blessings that God has given me? So you should be doing things in every aspect of your life to thank God for the blessings that he's given you, whether it's physical, whether it's going to the gym, having a healthy lifestyle, eating a good diet, being constantly studious, learning more about the world around you, learning more about people around you, becoming a better speaker, so you can speak to other people, so you can articulate your religion and God's message to them. Um, Learning about your religion, helping other people, all of these things, right? So you should constantly be striving to be the best version of yourself because of the blessing that God gave you, which is life. And that whole concept was reinstated in my life very heavily twice in my life because I've had two very very near death experiences. One when I was 12, I had a bad staph infection and I was in a coma for 10 days, almost died. Um, the fact that I'm still alive is a miracle from that. And then when I was in the military, I was on my last deployment. I was in a helicopter crash that claimed the lives of three fellow Marines of mine. And there's no logical reason why I'm still alive and walked out of that helicopter. I should have been dead. We blew up on impact. People had broken ribs, broken arms, broken legs. A lot of guys really banged up and mangled up. Three Marines died, and it's an absolute miracle that I survived. So I've been blessed. I've been very blessed throughout my life. I'm blessed just to wake up this morning. So why would I waste these days that God has so graciously given me?
That's amazing. It's amazing. My final question I have for you to end it off: if you had a microphone and you could tell the entire world one message, what would it be?
Entire world, one message. It's a big question. I'd say in regards to right now and what we're seeing in the world right now, look outside of yourself. There's a lot of selfishness in this world. I would say with everything that's happening in the world right now, everything that's happening in America, everything that's happening in Palestine, everything that's happening in the Middle East, everything that's happening in Africa that people don't talk about, in the Congo, everything that's happening in your own city that you don't see or hear about. Try to put yourself in other people's shoes for a second. Try for one day to imagine yourself being a child that was born in Palestine that couldn't control that, and you're fighting for your life every day. Your entire family has been bombed and killed, and you have no food, you have no clean water. Or imagine yourself somebody who has stage 4 terminal cancer. I want you to put yourself in somebody else's shoes for once in your life because people don't stop and take the time to do that. Count your blessings and imagine yourself in somebody else's shoes because there's so many people in this world who are complaining about the life they have, about the blessings that they have. They complain about the blessings that they have, and they judge people for the particular place in life that they're in. Christians or Americans will judge Palestinians or talk negatively about the Palestinians in Gaza, saying, oh, they voted for Hamas. They deserve what they get. It's not true. Imagine yourself for a second being a 5-year-old child who was born in Gaza. Try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. That would be my one message is stop for a day and just imagine yourself being in somebody else's shoes that you judge so heavily. And then imagine how you would live your life. And maybe at that point, you'll start to have compassion for other people. And furthermore, maybe you'll think about it so hard and so heavily that you'll want to do something to help those people.
Thank you for the conversation, Clyde.
Thank you. It was awesome, man.